The neon lights of Asgard flickered like distant stars, casting an otherworldly glow over the city that never slept. Skyscrapers of polished gold and silver pierced the heavens, their surfaces reflecting the shimmering auroras that danced across the night sky. Below, the streets buzzed with life, gods, mortals, and creatures of myth mingling in a chaotic symphony of modern and ancient. This was Asgard, a realm where the old gods had traded their thrones for lecture halls and their divine duties for the mundane struggles of contemporary life. I, Thor, god of thunder, stood on the balcony of my apartment overlooking the city. My hammer, Mjolnir, rested against the railing, its surface gleaming under the neon glow. It had been a long day, grading papers, preparing lectures, and mediating a petty dispute between two students over who had the right to sit in the front row of my Mythology and Modernity class. Finals week was upon us, and the pressure was mounting. "Thor, you look like you've been hit by one of your own lightning bolts," a familiar voice called from behind me. I turned to see Loki leaning against the doorway, his trademark smirk plastered across his face. His green eyes sparkled with mischief, and his black leather jacket seemed to absorb the light around him. "Loki," I said, my voice tinged with both annoyance and relief. "What do you want?" "Can't a brother check in on his favorite sibling?" He replied, stepping onto the balcony. "You know, you really should take a break. All work and no play makes Thor a dull god." I sighed, running a hand through my tangled hair. "I don't have time for your games, Loki. Finals week is chaos, and I still have a mountain of papers to grade." "Ah, yes, the joys of academia," Loki said, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "Tell me, brother, do you ever miss the good old days? You know, when our biggest concern was battling frost giants and preventing Ragnarok." I chuckled despite myself. "Sometimes, but this is the life I chose. Teaching mortals about our history, helping them understand the myths that shaped their world. It's important." Loki raised an eyebrow. "Important, perhaps, but hardly exciting. Speaking of which, have you seen the Tome of Eternal Wisdom lately?" I froze. The tome was one of Asgard's most sacred artifacts, a massive book that contained the collective knowledge of the gods. It was kept under heavy guard in the university's library, accessible only to those with the highest clearance. "Why do you ask?" I said, my voice cautious. Loki shrugged, his smirk widening. "No reason. Just curious." Before I could press him further, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Freya, one of my brightest students. "Professor Thor, we have a problem. The tome is missing." My heart sank. I glanced at Loki, who was now examining his nails with exaggerated nonchalance. "Loki," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "What did you do?" He looked up, feigning innocence. "Me? I'm hurt, brother. You think I'd stoop so low as to steal a dusty old book?" I grabbed Mjolnir and stormed past him. "If you're lying to me, Loki, so help me." "Relax, Thor," he called after me. "I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding. But if you need help finding it, you know where to find me." I didn't have time to argue. I raced through the streets of Asgard, my mind racing. The tome was more than just a book. It was the key to the gods' knowledge, the foundation of our teachings. Without it, the students couldn't complete their exams, and the balance of knowledge in Asgard would be at risk. When I reached the university, Freya was waiting for me outside the library. Her auburn hair was tied back in a loose braid, and her eyes were wide with worry. "Professor Thor," she said, her voice trembling. "I was studying in the library when I noticed the tome was gone. The guards said no one entered or left, but it's just vanished." I placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We'll find it, Freya. But I need your help. You're one of the smartest students I've ever taught, and if anyone can figure this out, it's you." She nodded, her determination shining through her fear. "What do we do first?" I took a deep breath, my mind racing. "First, we retrace your steps. Then we figure out who would want to steal the tome, and why." As we entered the library, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than just a simple theft. The tome contained secrets, secrets that could change the fate of Asgard. And if Loki was involved, things were about to get a lot more complicated. Little did I know, this was only the beginning. The storm was coming, and I was about to be caught in its eye. The library of Asgard University was a labyrinth of towering shelves, each filled with ancient scrolls, enchanted tomes, and artifacts that hummed with latent power. The air was thick with the scent of aged parchment and the faint crackle of magic. Freya and I stood at the center of the chaos, surrounded by the aftermath of the tome's disappearance. Freya's hands trembled as she flipped through the security logs on a glowing holographic screen. "The guards said no one entered or left the library last night," she said, her voice steady despite the tension in her shoulders. "But that's impossible. The tome couldn't have just vanished." I clenched my fists, feeling the weight of Mjolnir at my side. "Loki's involved. I know it. He's always been fond of illusions and tricks. If anyone could make something disappear without a trace, it's him." Freya glanced at me, her brow furrowed. "But why would he steal the tome? What does he gain from it?" "That's what we need to find out," I said, pacing the length of the library. "Loki doesn't do anything without a reason. If he took the tome, it's because he's after something specific, something hidden within its pages." Freya's eyes widened. "You think the tome contains a secret? It's more than just a book," I replied. "It's a repository of the gods' knowledge, including prophecies, spells, and histories that even I don't fully understand. If Loki's after something in there, it's not just mischief. It's something dangerous." Freya nodded, her determination hardening. "Then we need to figure out what he's after." "Where do we start?" I stopped pacing and turned to her. "We start with the last person who accessed the tome before it disappeared. Do you know who that was?" Freya tapped a few keys on the holographic screen, pulling up a list of recent users. "According to the logs, the last person to check out the tome was Professor Mimir." "Mimir," I repeated, my voice tinged with surprise. Mimir was the university's head of mythology studies, a wise and ancient figure known for his vast knowledge and cryptic advice. If anyone knew the secrets of the tome, it was him. "Let's pay him a visit," I said, gesturing for Freya to follow. Professor Mimir's office was a cluttered sanctuary of books, artifacts, and strange trinkets that seemed to hum with energy. The walls were lined with shelves that reached the ceiling, each crammed with scrolls and tomes that looked older than time itself. Mimir himself sat behind a massive oak desk, his single eye, a relic of his past sacrifices for wisdom, fixed on a glowing crystal ball. "Ah, Thor," he said without looking up, his voice deep and resonant. "I've been expecting you." "Mimir," I said, stepping into the room. "We need your help. The Tome of Eternal Wisdom is missing, and we think Loki's behind it." Mimir's eye flicked to me, his expression unreadable. "Loki, you say? That's troubling indeed. But tell me, Thor, why do you think he's taken it?" "Because he's Loki," I replied, frustration creeping into my voice. "He thrives on chaos. But this feels different. He's after something specific, and I need to know what it is." Mimir leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. "The tome is more than just a book, Thor. It's a key to secrets that even the gods fear to uncover. If Loki has taken it, it's because he's seeking one of those secrets." "What kind of secret?" Freya asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Mimir's gaze shifted to her, and for a moment he seemed to study her with a strange intensity. "The tome contains a prophecy," he said slowly. "A prophecy that foretells the end of Asgard if the gods do not change their ways. It speaks of a great calamity, a storm that will consume all unless the balance is restored." I felt a chill run down my spine. "And you think Loki's after this prophecy?" "Perhaps," Mimir said, his tone cryptic. "Or perhaps he's after something else entirely. The tome is vast and its secrets are many. But one thing is certain, if Loki has taken it, he's playing a dangerous game." Freya stepped forward, her eyes blazing with determination. "Then we need to stop him. How do we find him?" Mimir's lips curled into a faint smile. "Loki is a master of deception, but even he leaves traces. If you wish to find him, you must follow the threads of his deceit. Start with the places he frequents, the realms where chaos reigns supreme." "You mean Midgard?" I asked, my mind already racing. "Midgard is a start," Mimir said. "But Loki's influence stretches far beyond the mortal realm. You may need to venture into Jotunheim, Niflheim, or even deeper into the unknown." I exchanged a glance with Freya, seeing the same resolve in her eyes that burned within me. Then we'll go wherever we need to, I said. We'll find Loki and bring back the tome. Mimir nodded, his expression grave. Be careful, Thor. The path you tread is fraught with danger. And remember, not everything is as it seems. As Freya and I left Mimir's office, the weight of his words hung heavy in the air. The neon lights of Asgard seemed dimmer now, the city's vibrant energy overshadowed by the looming threat of Loki's schemes. Where do we start? Freya asked as we stepped into the bustling streets. Midgard, I said, gripping Mjolnir tightly. If Loki's hiding, he'll be where the chaos is thickest. And there's no place more chaotic than Earth during finals week. Freya nodded, her determination unwavering. Then let's go. We don't have time to waste. As we made our way to the Bifrost, the shimmering bridge that connected Asgard to the other realms, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were walking into a trap. Loki was always one step ahead, and this time was no different. But if there was one thing I knew, it was that I couldn't face him alone. Freya, I said as we approached the Bifrost's entrance. Stay close. Loki's tricks are dangerous, and I don't want you getting hurt. She gave me a small smile, her confidence shining through. Don't worry, Professor Thor. I can handle myself. I nodded, though my unease remained. As the Bifrost activated, its rainbow light enveloping us, I braced myself for what lay ahead. The storm was coming, and I could only hope we were ready to face it. The Bifrost's rainbow light faded as Freya and I materialized in the heart of Midgard, Earth. The transition was jarring, the neon glow of Asgard replaced by the dim, flickering streetlights of a bustling city. The air was thick with the scent of rain and the distant hum of traffic. Finals week here was in full swing, and the streets were alive with students rushing to libraries, coffee shops, and study groups. Where do we start? Freya asked, her voice barely audible over the city's noise. I scanned the area, my grip tightening on Mjolnir. Loki thrives in chaos, and there's no shortage of that here. But he's not one to hide in plain sight. We need to think like him. Where would he go if he wanted to stay hidden but still keep an eye on things? Freya frowned, her eyes narrowing in thought. Somewhere high. Somewhere he can see everything but remain unseen. I nodded. Exactly. Let's head to the tallest building in the city. If Loki's here, that's where he'll be. We made our way through the crowded streets, the weight of our mission pressing down on us. The city's energy was overwhelming, a stark contrast to the ordered chaos of Asgard. But amidst the noise and confusion, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. As we approached the towering skyscraper at the city's center, Freya suddenly stopped, her eyes widening. Professor Thor, look! She pointed to a nearby alley where a faint green glow emanated from the shadows. My heart raced as I recognized the telltale sign of Loki's magic. Stay close, I said, leading the way into the alley. The glow intensified as we ventured deeper, the air growing colder with each step. At the end of the alley, we found a portal, a swirling vortex of green light that pulsed with an eerie energy. This is it, I said, my voice low. Loki's gone through here. But where does it lead? Freya stepped closer, her eyes fixed on the portal. I don't know, but we don't have a choice. We have to follow him. I hesitated, the weight of responsibility pressing down on me. Freya, this could be dangerous. Loki's not just playing games anymore. If he's gone to this much trouble to hide, it's because he's after something big. She met my gaze, her determination unwavering. I know, but we can't let him get away with it. We have to stop him. I nodded, pride swelling in my chest. All right, let's go. We stepped through the portal, the world around us dissolving into a blur of light and shadow. When the chaos subsided, we found ourselves in a desolate, icy wasteland. The air was frigid, the ground covered in a thick layer of frost. In the distance, jagged mountains loomed, their peaks obscured by swirling clouds of snow. Where are we? Freya asked, her breath visible in the cold air. Niflheim, I replied, my voice grim. The realm of the dead. Freya's eyes widened. Why would Loki come here? That's what we need to find out, I said, scanning the horizon. But we need to be careful. Niflheim is ruled by Hel, and she's not one to welcome visitors. We pressed on, the icy wind biting at our skin. The landscape was barren, the only sound the crunch of snow beneath our feet. As we ventured deeper into the realm, the air grew heavier, the sense of foreboding almost palpable. After what felt like hours, we reached a massive, ancient gate. Its iron bars were twisted and rusted, the symbols carved into them glowing faintly with a cold, blue light. Beyond the gate lay a sprawling fortress, its spires piercing the dark sky. "Hell's domain," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Freya shivered, her arms wrapped around herself. "Do you think Loki's in there? If he's not, Hell will know where he is," I replied. "But we need to be prepared. Hell's not going to just hand him over." We approached the gate, the air growing colder with each step. As we reached the entrance, the gates creaked open, revealing a figure cloaked in shadows. "Thor," a voice echoed, cold and commanding. "What brings you to my realm?" Hel stepped into the light, her pale skin contrasting sharply with her dark, flowing robes. Her eyes burned with an icy fire, and her presence was both mesmerizing and terrifying. "Hel," I said, bowing my head slightly. "We're here for Loki. He's taken something that doesn't belong to him, and we need to bring him back." Hel's lips curled into a faint smile. "Loki is here, but he's not yours to take. He's made a bargain with me, and I intend to see it through." Freya stepped forward, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. "What kind of bargain?" Hel's gaze shifted to her, and for a moment she seemed to study Freya with a strange intensity. "Loki has offered me something of great value in exchange for his freedom. But if you wish to take him, you must offer me something of equal worth." I clenched my fists, my mind racing. "What do you want?" Hel's smile widened. "The Sword of Eternal Night. Retrieve it for me and I will release Loki." Freya's eyes widened. "The Sword of Eternal Night. But that's a powerful artifact," I interrupted, my voice grim. "One that could tip the balance of power in the realms." Hel nodded. "Indeed. But the choice is yours, Thor. Retrieve the sword and Loki is yours. Fail and he remains here forever." I exchanged a glance with Freya, seeing the same resolve in her eyes that burned within me. "We'll do it," I said, my voice firm. Hel's smile faded, replaced by a look of cold determination. "Very well. But be warned, the path to the sword is fraught with danger. Many have sought it and none have returned." As Hel disappeared into the shadows, the gates slammed shut behind us, leaving Freya and I standing alone in the icy wasteland. "What now?" Freya asked, her voice trembling. I took a deep breath, the weight of our mission pressing down on me. "Now we find the sword, and we do whatever it takes to bring Loki back." The icy winds of Niflheim howled around us as Freya and I stood before the gates of Hel's fortress, the weight of our mission pressing heavily on our shoulders. The Sword of Eternal Night, our only bargaining chip to free Loki and retrieve the tome, was hidden somewhere in this frozen wasteland, guarded by dangers even I, the god of thunder, hesitated to face. "We need a plan," Freya said, her breath visible in the frigid air. Her auburn hair was dusted with snow, and her eyes burned with determination. "We can't just wander around hoping to stumble upon the sword." I nodded, my grip tightening on Mjolnir. "You're right." But Hel didn't give us much to go on. All she said was that the sword is hidden in the depths of Niflheim. Freya frowned, her gaze sweeping across the desolate landscape. The depths, what if she meant the caves beneath the mountains? They're said to be endless, filled with ancient secrets and forgotten treasures. "It's as good a place to start as any," I said, though unease gnawed at me. The caves of Niflheim were no ordinary tunnels. They were a labyrinth of ice and shadow, home to creatures that even the gods feared. We trudged through the snow, the icy wind biting at our skin. The mountains loomed ahead, their jagged peaks piercing the dark sky. As we approached the entrance to the caves, a low rumble echoed from within, sending a shiver down my spine. "Stay close," I said, raising Mjolnir. The hammer crackled with energy, casting a faint glow that illuminated the cave's entrance. The interior was a maze of ice and stone, the walls shimmering with an eerie blue light. The air was colder here, the silence oppressive. Every step echoed, the sound reverberating through the tunnels like a warning. "Thor," Freya whispered, her voice trembling. "Do you hear that?" I paused, listening. At first, there was nothing but the sound of our breathing. Then faintly I heard it, a low, guttural growl growing louder with each passing second. "Something's coming," I said, my voice low. "Be ready." The growl turned into a roar as a massive creature emerged from the shadows. It was a Draugr, a reanimated corpse of a long-dead warrior, its icy armor glinting in the dim light. Its hollow eyes glowed with a malevolent light, and its sword, encrusted with frost, gleamed as it raised it high. "Freya, stay back," I shouted, stepping forward to meet the Draugr. The creature lunged, its sword slicing through the air with deadly precision. I swung Mjolnir, the hammer colliding with the blade in a shower of sparks. The force of the impact sent the Draugr stumbling back, but it quickly recovered, its movements unnaturally swift. "Thor, behind you!" Freya's voice rang out, and I turned just in time to see another Draugr emerging from the shadows. I cursed under my breath. "Freya, we need to find the sword quickly." "I'll hold them off," Freya nodded, her eyes scanning the cave. "There," she shouted, pointing to a narrow passageway. "I think I see something glowing." I swung Mjolnir again, the hammer's lightning striking the first Draugr and reducing it to ash. The second Draugr lunged at me, but I sidestepped, bringing the hammer down on its head with a thunderous crash. "Go," I shouted to Freya. "I'll catch up." She hesitated for a moment, then darted down the passageway. I followed, the sound of more Draugr echoing behind us. The passageway opened into a vast chamber, its walls lined with ancient runes that pulsed with a faint blue light. At the center of the chamber, embedded in a block of ice, was the Sword of Eternal Night. "There it is," Freya said, her voice filled with awe. But before we could reach it, the ground beneath us began to shake. The ice cracked, and from the depths emerged a massive serpent, its scales glistening like polished obsidian. Its eyes glowed with an otherworldly light, and its fangs dripped with venom. "Jörmungandr's kin," I muttered, my heart sinking. "Freya, stay back." The serpent lunged, its massive jaws snapping shut just inches from me. I swung Mjolnir, the hammer striking the creature's scales with a deafening clang. The serpent recoiled, its hiss echoing through the chamber. "Thor, the sword," Freya shouted. "I can free it, but I need time." I nodded, my focus shifting to the serpent. "Do it." "I'll keep it busy." The serpent lunged again, and I met it head-on, the force of the impact sending me skidding back. I swung Mjolnir, summoning a bolt of lightning that struck the serpent's head. The creature roared in pain, its massive body thrashing wildly. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Freya working frantically to free the sword from the ice. Her hands glowed with a faint golden light, a sign of her Vanir heritage. The ice began to crack, the sword's dark energy pulsing with each strike. "Almost there," Freya shouted, her voice strained. The serpent turned its attention to her, its eyes narrowing. I leapt in front of it, swinging Mjolnir with all my strength. The hammer struck the creature's jaw, sending it reeling. "Now, Freya," I shouted. With a final, powerful strike, Freya shattered the ice, freeing the sword. She grabbed it, her eyes widening as its dark energy surged through her. "Thor, I've got it," she said, her voice filled with triumph. But the serpent wasn't finished. It lunged at her, its jaws wide. I reacted instinctively, throwing Mjolnir with all my might. The hammer struck the serpent's head, the force of the impact sending it crashing into the wall. "Let's go," I shouted, grabbing Freya's hand. We ran, the serpent's roars echoing behind us. The cave began to collapse, the walls shaking as the creature thrashed in its death throes. We burst out of the cave just as the entrance collapsed, the ground trembling beneath our feet. "We did it," Freya said, her voice filled with relief. I nodded, though my heart was still racing. "Now we take the sword to Hel and get Loki back." The final confrontation, Hel's fortress, loomed before us, its dark spires piercing the sky. The gates creaked open as we approached, revealing Hel standing in the courtyard, her expression unreadable. "You've returned," she said, her voice cold. "And you've brought the sword." I stepped forward, holding the sword of eternal night aloft. "We've fulfilled our end of the bargain. Now release Loki and return the tome." Hel's lips curled into a faint smile. "Very well. But first, let me see the sword." I hesitated, sensing a trap. But before I could react, Hel raised her hand, and the sword flew from my grasp, landing in hers. "You didn't think it would be that easy, did you?" she said, her eyes gleaming with malice. "The sword is mine, and so is Asgard." Freya stepped forward, her eyes blazing. "You won't get away with this," Hel laughed, a cold, hollow sound. "And who's going to stop me?" "You." Before Hel could react, Loki appeared behind her, his trademark smirk plastered across his face. "Actually, I think I might." Hel turned, her eyes widening in surprise. "Loki," How? Loki's form shimmered, revealing that he had been disguised as one of Hel's guards. You really should have seen that coming, he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. With a swift motion, Loki grabbed the sword from Hel's grasp and tossed it to me. Thor now, I caught the sword, its dark energy surging through me. I raised it high, summoning a bolt of lightning that struck Hel with a deafening crash. The goddess screamed, her form dissolving into shadows as the fortress began to collapse around us. "Let's go," Loki shouted, grabbing Freya's hand. We ran, the ground shaking beneath our feet. The Bifrost's light enveloped us just as the fortress collapsed, the realm of Niflheim crumbling into darkness. The resolution we emerged in Asgard, the sword of eternal night and the tome of eternal wisdom in our possession. The students were able to complete their exams, and the balance of knowledge in Asgard was restored. Loki, though still mischievous, showed a glimmer of redemption. "I may have caused some trouble," he said, his smirk fading. "But I did it to protect Asgard. The prophecy in the tome, it's real. We need to be ready." I nodded, my respect for my brother growing. "We will be." Together, Freya, now a permanent member of Asgard University, stood by my side, her confidence shining through. "We've faced the storm," she said, "and we've come out stronger." As I looked out over the city of Asgard, I felt a sense of hope. The storm had passed, but the lessons we'd learned would guide us through whatever challenges lay ahead. And as the neon lights of Asgard flickered in the night, I knew that the whispers of lore would continue to inspire and guide us, just as they always had.